It's hard to ignore South Korea's explosion in popularity. Music, TV, and movies from South Korea have won the hearts of consumers abroad and only seem to be becoming more popular. Since the late 1990s, South Korea has emerged as a new hub for the preparation of popular culture, exporting its media business into Japan, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and the Western world. Maybe you're familiar with the slew of K-pop artists that became popular over the past couple of decades. God, BOA, Brown Eyed Girls, Blackpink, or of course, BTS. This is my series about how the rise of the Hallyu created some of the amazing indie scenes in South Korea. We're going to talk about the history of the Hallyu, K-pop, and of course cover a lot of interesting indie artists, movements, and labels. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more of these. The first couple of episodes are mostly going to cover history, and then later on we're going to move on to things like indie, underground R&B, Shibuya K, and check out some of the indie labels and see what they did in Korea's music scene. The wave of popular Korean culture, known as the Korean Wave, or the Hallyu, was coined by the Chinese media in mid-1998 to describe the sudden craze of Chinese youth for products of Korean culture when their exports gained some serious success as a novelty in China's market. This novelty would eventually turn into a mainstay, and its spread would move from China to seemingly everywhere. Korean Wave, or the Hallyu, refers to the worldwide popularity of pop culture, entertainment, music, television dramas, and movies in South Korea's cultural economy. Hallyu is a Chinese word that literally means Korean wave. This concept refers to the planned and organized development of Korean culture, not just as a local phenomenon, but as created as a product to be exported abroad across the world. It encapsulates everything from music, movies, theater, and Korean food. Also known as the Hallyu in Chinese, the term was first coined by the Chinese press in the late 1990s to describe the growing popularity of Korean pop culture in China. This definition is not so straightforward sometimes. You can even get online services like counseling that are somehow considered Hallyu. So I think it's really important to focus on the notion of the export of culture and services rather than any particular genre or style. Hallyu 1.0 refers to the first iteration, with a focus on exportation of drama TV series mainly to China. A Korean TV drama called What is Love was broadcast on the China Central Television Station, the major state television broadcaster in mainland China. It was one of the highest ranked programs at the time and was based on the story of an extended family living under one roof. This resonated with socialist China and their attitude towards nuclear families and individualism. This sort of familiarity or nostalgia was a novelty that really resonated with the Chinese audience. The charismatic and patriarchal head of the family, the grandfather, had this sort of idyllic air in his perception. China was all too happy for another alternative to Hollywood and Japanese cultures. The 1990s opened the door for cultural imports. Despite Beijing's tight control over such things, the spread of the internet and early social media served to fast forward this new trend. There were some sensibilities in the early Hallyu that were very compatible with Chinese culture. With a public who could not easily relate their daily lives to American and Japanese cultural products, whose exploration of things like violence and sexuality is a bit of a departure from their audience tastes. Anti-American and anti-Japanese sentiments, driven by the historical memories of conflicts and colonization, wasn't doing Hollywood's perception in China any favors. Although this was more of a generational thing, it was common for parents to be very disapproving if their kids were into Western or Japanese media. In China, the May 4th movement and Cultural Revolution undermined Chinese traditional culture and Confucian values that emphasize relationships. Korean pop culture skillfully blends Western and Asian values to create its own quality. The producers and creators of the Hallyu knew exactly what they were doing. They had the formula for success with the Chinese market. As individualism manifested itself during the 20th century led to some disjointed modes of perception of world culture to the Chinese markets, Korea's Confucian values was almost too good of a fit. And this was perhaps one of the most important ingredients for the Hallyu's early success. There were a lot of these rags to riches storylines that really sort of spoke to an audience who lived through the changing quality of life brought forth by the Asian economic boom of the past couple of decades. Popular characters in the Korean soap operas often break out of their monotonous middle-class lives, and audiences would get to live vicariously through some of these characters' journey to fame and fortune. Korea's historical dramas often hint the regional dominance of Chinese dynasties in earlier centuries. For instance, one of the most popular episodes of Dai Jang Gyum in China was about the royal reception of a Ming envoy to Joseon. In the episode, the entire Joseon court focuses its full attention on the reception of the Ming envoy, whose arrogant qualities are somewhat overlooked due to their great power. Chinese people find traces back to their own traditional culture in the Korean soap operas and regain cultural identity and pride through them. You might be familiar with dramas like Mr. Sunshine, a 2018 drama that centers around a man who's taken to the US as a child and returns home as an American Marine Corps officer during the time when foreign forces are threatening to colonize the land. Praised for its history-rich plots and particularly strong female characters, the series received critical acclaim and positive reviews from both critics and ordinary viewers. Or 2020's hit drama The World of the Married. With its iconic first 2 episodes hitting double-digit ratings, it tells the story of a respected doctor whose relationship with her husband starts to fall apart after he betrays her. Or 2018's Sky Castle, perhaps one of the all-time highest-rated Korean dramas, which focuses on a group of rich families and touches on societal issues like the overly competitive education system and wealthy, elite families' obsession with having their children study in the most prestigious universities. So if you look at how popular these dramas are today, you can trace their success back to their early explosion of popularity in China. A recent example of the intertwining of these two markets is in the show Lie to Me, which didn't score especially high in Korea's market back at home, but in China, it was one of the top-rated shows in the online streaming market. The two main characters masquerade as a married couple to sway a Chinese businessman and his wife into signing a multi-million-dollar contract. This Chinese businessman is depicted in a way that pays some serious homage to all of the positive qualities of the Chinese. In various occasions, the characters in the show are even seen speaking in Chinese. High education, big business, and cosmopolitanism were usually something associated with characters or plotlines intermingling with America. But here was a case where China had taken the reins in this drama, and soon after, many others. This material resonates perfectly with the Chinese audience. An early observation of this warm reception among the Chinese led to many writers and producers playing off of this phenomenon. The film industry also blew up alongside the TV industry pretty much at the same time. The history of Korean cinema goes back more than 100 years, but exploded in popularity at the turn of the century with films such as Oldboy, a film that is characterized by surrealism, gritty violence, and raw emotion. The theme is about revenge and how it can destroy a person. With world-class acting from Choi Min-sik and Yoo Ji-tae, Oh Dae-soo, and Lee Woo-jin, respectively, the success of this film marked the exposure of South Korea's world-class acting to a huge audience abroad. Or 2002's Oasis, which depicts the joy of human connection despite the unease brought forth by mental health or emotional instability. The movie highlighted moral questions and showed audiences that South Korea's market was willing to challenge fairly dark content. Burning and On the Beach at Night Alone are other classics which won leading awards in major categories. That about wraps it up for this first episode. I just wanted to introduce the series and kind of set myself up for next time, where we're going to talk a little bit more about the history of the Hallyu. I'll probably take 3 or 4 little episodes like this to do that. And then we're going to break into talking about some indie labels, artists, and stuff like that pretty soon. So stay tuned and make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, I'll see you guys probably in about a week or so with the next episode. See you guys next time.